The Carolina Panthers' interior offensive line was a train wreck in 2023, but after a strong offseason in 2024 and an even stronger regular season once things played out, is it now the strength of the roster? We'll talk about that right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we continue into off-season mode. But in a couple weeks, we'll be back to Monday through Friday and living up to our motto, your team every day. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. And although the mailbag is still on hiatus, I'm still here to answer your questions via DMs on Twitter or just simply adding me both on Twitter and on Blue Sky at Julian Council. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. We're back for one final preview of the offense here on Locked On Panthers. So far, we talked about Bryce Young and the quarterbacks. Talk about the running back duo here in Carolina, the wide receiver group, a deep and talented group. We talked about tight ends. On Wednesday, we took focus on the offensive tackles, and now we're going to talk about the interior of the Panthers offensive line, talk about the centers and the guards heading into the 2025 season here in Carolina. And let's start off by looking at the center group here in Carolina. Usually when we're talking about camp battles, we're talking about guys who are fighting for bottom of the roster spots. Like, that's what we're talking about. Talking about guys who are going to be number 51, 52, 53 on the depth chart. We're not usually talking about starters and guys battling for a starting position, which has kind of become commonplace recently in Carolina. There's not usually quarterback battles, but we saw one between Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, and I'll put that one in quotes, battle. The Panthers spent all offseason trying to find a replacement to Sam Darnold, and of course, Baker Mayfield was going to be the starter. Just weird how they went all about that, but that is why Matt Rule is no longer here, and it's also why Baker and Sam aren't here, as things did not play out well for them during their tenures here in Charlotte. And we saw a couple of years ago, there was actually a center competition between Bradley Bozeman and Pat Elflein. That Elflein actually won in large part because Bozeman was injured during training camp. And then later on, we saw Bozeman take over that job after Elflein was out for the rest of the season. So here we are once again with a center competition for the starting role, as you have in one corner, us and Corbett, the veteran, and then in another corner, the young guy, Cade Mays, who got to start the tail end of last season. But it's a good thing. Understand this. No matter who wins, it's a good thing for Carolina that both of those guys were able to come back this offseason, and both of them coming back on a very nice salary for the Carolina Panthers organization, not to spend a ton of money to bring both of those guys back in here. So no matter what, whether it's Austin who wins or Cade who wins, both those guys will be on the roster this season. Certainly one of them could be used as a trade piece if another team is desperately looking for a center this upcoming season. But I would think that both those guys stick around and they will continue to compete throughout the season, but one of those guys will take the reins, be the guy week one, and hopefully will be the guy through the entirety of the season. But if ever an injury, we already know, just based off of last season, that Cade can step in, that Austin can step in, and both those guys can play at a pretty high level. Let's start off by looking at Austin Corbett, who's coming back for his season here in Carolina. It's been up and down for him. Really good season in 2022 before tearing his ACL in that Week 18 walk-off win in New Orleans that cost him the first 6 seasons of the 2023 season. He came back and was not the same guy for those 4 weeks following the bye, and then had another knee injury in the same knee, but a meniscus tear instead of an ACL tear. He was out for the rest of the year, so missed all of these, missed 13 games that season, only playing in 4, and then came back last year, was asked to play center, and he had talked about his coach at Nevada back in college, told him that in all likelihood at some point in time in his NFL career, he would be a center. He thought he was a really smart guy, guy's a really good leader, and it would make sense that eventually he would be in that spot. And looking at the fact that Bryce Young really struggled as a rookie and needed to have a veteran presence there for him in that center quarterback exchange, they wanted to have Austin Corbett move over there to play center. Of course, they brought in Robert Hunt, and they also brought in Damien Lewis via free agency to play those two starting guard positions at left guard and right guard, respectively. Corbett filling in at center made a lot of sense. The only problem was he was done after 5 games, really 4.5, as he was injured in the first half of that loss in week 5 against Chicago. That's also when Taylor Moton went out with an injury, and then he was done for the season. Brady Christensen took over for a little bit, but then at the end of the season, Cade Mays took over, became the starting center for Carolina, and leads us to this point in time where both Corbett and Mays are back. But Austin Corbett, sticking around here in Charlotte, signed a 1-year contract worth $3 million. Contract is fully guaranteed. They're up to $1 million in per game bonuses, and an additional $4 million and incentives for him are available. So it's $3 million, but he could end up getting potentially $8 million if he does win the starting center job and is able to play every single game for Carolina this season. And speaking of the missed time, he's only played 9 games the last 2 seasons, missing 25 games after not missing a single game during 2020, 2021, and in 2022. Of course, in 2021, he was there in Los Angeles with the Rams. And looking at his grades last year, PFF-wise, he was arguably the best offensive lineman for Carolina last time he was fully healthy in 2022. And then, of course, struggled in 2023. Early on in the season, he was just okay at center. Looking at PFF, he had a 62.2 overall grade. If you don't put the snap minimum up there, he was 32nd among all guys that played center last year. His pass blocking grade was 64.7. That was 29th. And in run blocking grade, only a 59.3. That was 39th. And he only allowed 1 sack, which is a good thing, and 3 pressures in 187 pass block snaps. But you just look at those grades, feels like it leaves a lot to be desired, even though watching it, didn't really see a ton of drop off there from the center position, which wasn't great the year prior. Bradley Bozeman, in large part because 7 different left guards, 8 different right guards. And that was, of course, something that Carolina had to address last offseason, which they did. And we'll talk about the guys they brought in here momentarily. But looking at that, doesn't necessarily tell you that Austin Corbett was great at center last year, even though I just look at watching the games, thought he was a lot better than what those numbers say. But Cade Mays, though, his numbers were pretty impressive. And this is a guy who's back in Carolina. He signed a restricted free agent tender that's worth $3.4 million. He started the final 8 games of the season at center after he was cut. I mean, he did not make the team last season. He was cut. He ended up on the Giants practice squad. The Panthers re-signed him off the Giants practice squad after Brady Christensen had to start at center. And when we saw Austin Corbett out for the season with the, I think it was the biceps tear. So he comes in, Cade does, and he plays really well. And you look at the game in Munich against Dexter Lawrence, who, yes, he would have repped against every once in a while during practice up in New York, but still for him to play well against him. And then after the bye week, going up against Chris Jones, maybe the best defensive tackle in football at this point in time. Really impressive stuff. His PFF grade, 66.1 overall. That was 13th out of 40 qualifying centers. His pass blocking grade, 74.9, 4th out of 39 qualifying centers. And his run blocking grade, 66.9, 17th out of 37 qualifying centers. Overall, pass blocking, run blocking, graded out higher than Brady Christensen. Now, a larger sample size, not Brady Christensen, than Austin Corbett, but a larger, and Brady Christensen, by the way, but a larger sample size. He graded out better than Austin Corbett did. He did not allow a sack last year, gave up 10 pressures and 327 pass block snaps. So you just look at it. Cade Mays was better last season. Cade Mays is also younger, and that's someone who you would think could grow with Bryce Young for the next 5+ years. So just longevity wise, it feels like Cade Mays would be the best person for Carolina to have start at center. But competition wise, we have to find out who truly will be the best option this season for Carolina. Like, you can't get too caught up in what's going to happen in 28 and 29 and beyond. You have to focus in here on 2025 and all the team's goals that they have and figure out who's the best player for you now. Because if Cade Mays is not the best player for you now, does not mean he can't be the best player for you in 26 or in 27, if that's the direction Carolina wants to go into. But just looking at the numbers last year and both the sample sizes, it appears that Cade Mays was the best center on this Panthers football team a year ago. And I'm wondering if that'll be the case yet again this upcoming year in Carolina. So that is definitely the camp battle to watch play out, as that is actually a starting job on the line. The Panthers' offensive guards were a train wreck a couple years ago, and even before that, they really have struggled. But now feels like that is a position group in a really good place. Talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love that it's completely online. Rougiette connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit Rougiette website for full safety information. For a number of years, the Panthers' offensive line was one of the biggest weaknesses on this roster. And honestly, it was a tie between quarterback and offensive line. Now, tackle, Taylor Moton, right tackle in particular, like that's been solid. Left tackle, it's had its issues, but it's been solidified now by Ike Ekwonu. The interior of the offensive line, though, that has been a big issue, whether it was Matt Paradis or Pat Elflein or Bradley Bozeman playing center. There have been a myriad of issues, but really, it's been guard that has just been the sticking point here in Carolina that they have not been able to get right up until, well, it seems like last year. And that's not to take away from Brady Christensen and Austin Corbett, who back in 2022, those guys really combined to have a solid guard combination. Corbett arguably was the best offensive lineman on the team that season. Brady, he was the lowest graded offensive lineman according to PFF, but he was able to stay healthy and play that entire season before getting injured in week 18, like Austin did in that win against New Orleans. But overall, solid player, found the home. And now his home appears to be at tackle, which plenty of y'all believe from day one that's where he should have been. It took some time to get there, but he has finally gotten there as a backup tackle on this roster. And you could see, and you did see, how quickly things can turn anytime you have any sort of injury. Let's go back to the 2023 season, unfortunately. I'm sorry to bring this up, but remember, 7 different left guards, 8 different right guards, a complete catastrophe because Austin Corbett was recovering from the torn ACL, missed the first 6 weeks of the season on PUP, came back after the bye week, did not play all that well in those 4 games, and was out again for the rest of the season with another knee injury. Brady Christensen has a biceps tear week 1 in Atlanta, and that put Carolina in an awful position where Cade Mays in his second year really wasn't ready to play. And we saw that as he did not perform well. Chandler Zavala, as a rookie out of NC State, 4th-round pick, came in and he was not ready to go, and he looked terrible. He was out for the rest of the season at some point in time. Calvin Throckmorton, who they were able to pick up on the waiver wire after initial roster cutdown day, he was only here for a couple weeks, did not play well. Justin McCray, who was here primarily because of his time he had spent with James Campen in Houston, he was a liability. Gabe Jackson was a liability. Brett Toth, remember him. Nash Jensen, J.D. Dorenzo, just rundown of guys you don't want playing significant snaps for you in the National Football League. And that was the case, unfortunately, in 2023 because of injuries. But even going back prior to when Christensen and Corbett teamed up in 22 to 2021, when it was Michael Jordan, not the one who used to own the Hornets and the greatest basketball player of all time, the one from Ohio State. Yeah, he was rough. Dennis Daly, he struggled. John Miller, Oh, yikes. Trenton Scott. It was a tough situation in 21 with that offensive line. And as Sam Darnold really struggled behind them and with Chris McCaffrey out, that did not help matters at all offensively. So now, though, it feels like they're in a good spot because Robert Hunt is here. Damien Lewis is here. And Chandler Zavala has gotten better after being asked to do way more than they should have asked him, but out of necessity as a rookie. And just looking at Robert Hunt last year, he signed a 5-year, $100 million contract, which felt like a lot of money to give Robert Hunt, but he played all 16 games. Only missed the finale. He didn't play all. So he played 16 out of 17 games, only missed the finale in Atlanta because of a knee injury. You look at his PFF grade. He was 24th out of 77 guards. He had a 67.7. He had a pass blocking grade of 57.5. That was 55th out of 73 guards. Only allowed 36 pressures and 5 sacks in 623 pass blocking snaps. Run blocking grade, it was 18th out of 73 guards. So he got paid a lot of money. Highest paid right guard based off of APY, and third highest paid guard overall. So that kind of makes you wonder, did they overpay? He played a lot. And that's the thing. They didn't have guys who were healthy in 23 and in 21, even in 2020. Just being available is such an important thing for that position. And I thought overall that he did play well, play as a top 25 guard. Now, he's not being paid to be a top 25 guard. They're paying him to be one of the top guards in the NFL, which was arguable whether he was even that when he was in Miami, but still, Robert Hunt's come in, solidified right guard, good player, is going to be somebody they're going to continue to lean on this season and moving forward. But Damien Lewis, probably the best signing as far as the two because of the bargain when you look at it. Coming in to play left guard, 4-year, $53 million deal. He also played 16 out of 17 games, only missing the week 4 contest versus Cincinnati because of an elbow injury. He had a 75.5 grade. That was 12th out of 77 qualifying guards. Had a 72.0 pass blocking grade. That was 17th out of 73 guards. Allowed 24 pressures and 6 sacks and 616 pass blocking snaps. 76.9 run blocking grade, was 11th out of 73 guards. 7th highest paid left guard based on APY. 14th highest paid guard overall, and he played like a top 15 guard in most of those categories according to PFF last season. Really nice deal to get him. Damien Lewis, Robert Hunt, those two guys, really solid. But it's not just them. It's what's behind them. And Brady can play that spot if they need him to, but also so can Chandler Zavala, who, again, was awful as a rookie. You go back to the week 3 game in Seattle, he had to start. He had a 0.0 pass blocking grade, which I don't even know how that's possible. But last year, so much better when asked to go in there. The standard never dropped off when you went from the starters to the backups. And Chandler had a 71.2 overall PFF grade, a 73.9 pass blocking grade, a 71.9 run blocking grade. If you ignore the snap minimum, he was 28th, 24th, and 27th overall in each of those categories, according to PFF. He allowed 0 sacks and 3 pressures and 93 pass blocking snaps. Like, honestly, bravo for Chandler Zavala. Bravo just for what the Panthers offensive line setup, where they had 3 different coaches focusing on centers, guards, and tackles, just the way that they were able to get these guys, especially in the interior, at that guard spot to play as well as they played last year. And all of them coming back this upcoming season has me excited and should have you excited and have you wondering, is this the strongest position group on the roster now? Do you have Hunt, you have Lewis, and you have Zavala, who you can rely upon there at the offensive guard spot? Such a better situation than the one they were in 2023 because of injuries and depth, and then also in 21 in some of the years before getting Christensen and Corbett in 2022, but now, of course, having Hunt and Lewis signed on and Zavala continue to develop behind those guys here in Carolina. So how many guys will stick on the roster? And, I mean, is this pretty much already said and done? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game of friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get the first pitch, and they've got incredible flexible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worrying out of buying. Game Time has last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings like 10% off, exclusive zone deals for FIFA Club World Cup matchups. And if you're here in Charlotte this summer, you definitely want to check that out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I don't really think it's going to be a mystery who's going to be on the roster here this upcoming season when you look at the interior of the Panthers offensive line. Robert Hunt, obviously on the roster. Damien Lewis, obviously going to be on the roster. Austin Corbett, Cade Mays, both those guys fighting for the center position. Possibly the loser gets traded away, but I don't think that's what they want to do. Yes, you have Brady Christensen who can play center if need be, but yeah, I'm guessing Corbett and Mays are sticking around. And then Chandler Zavala, based off of how he played last year. And I remember just the rhetoric coming from Dave Canales and some people within the organization during training camp, how they were seeing a lot out of Chandler Zavala that they liked. And I was kind of like, okay, well, this guy was pretty rough last year, understood that was a rookie, but come on, you guys like him that much? And well, we saw last season when he had to come in there, why they were saying so many nice things about Chandler Zavala. So those five, I can't see them not being on the roster. So that would make 9 guys on the roster when counting Moten and Kwanu, Christensen, and what's our other guy? Who's that? Okay, our other tackle here in Carolina. Well, of course, I blank out on his name while doing this. And Yash Nyman. So those are the 9 guys on the offensive line who for sure are sticking around. They kept 10 last year. If they're going to keep another one, I'm just looking at the roster bubble of guys within this position group. It would be Jarrett Kingston, who I would think would be the guy. He only played, I think, like 2 or 3 offensive snaps. He only played like 24 snaps overall because he's mainly a special teamer. But he played in 7 games last year. So that would be the guy who I think, if of the other players who are in the depth chart, guard and tackle wise, that he'd be the next one I would think who would have a chance to actually make the roster. And then the rest of these guys, Jahir Carter, Luke Kandra, and Steven Losoya, they are practice squad options or UFL bound. That's the way I look at it. There's not much to discuss here as far as the offensive line depth of roster spots, because we know who those top guys are from last year. They're all back. Maybe there's room for one more to have a 10th. And if it is going to be anyone, it's probably going to be Jarrett Kingston. So not a lot of intrigue as far as who's going to make the roster here on the Panthers offensive line. But it's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. Yes, there's no mailbag, but you can still always hit me up there in my DMs. Just simply at me. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And we are back on Monday for one final show in June, as we're going to give you, I guess I'm going to give you an overall state of the Carolina Panthers offense as we prepare for the 2025 season. That coming up on Monday here on Locked On Panthers.